Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 7 of the Inspire series, where tonight we are discussing, talking about what we think is the changing face of children's books, picture books for 2023 and beyond. We're just chatting about what direction we feel they might go in. With us tonight, we have Josh and Sarah. Karen and Michelle unfortunately can't be with us, but we have a special guest, Anne Paris, who is a literary agent. So welcome, Anne.
Yeah.
Okay, so diving straight into our topic, the future of books, picture books. Josh, you write and illustrate your own picture books. Can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm right in the beautiful sunlight here. Can you see this at the moment? Because I've got some big windows here, and the sun's just setting in over here in WA, and I'm just beautifully illuminated like this. Yeah, for me, I look at picture books from the perspective of what I'm creating right in this moment, what I need to create, and I suppose I look at the fact that social and emotional learning is starting to creep in a big way in kids' books. And I suppose that forms the backbone of what I do is everything about social emotional learning with each book. Each book has a different theme, whether it's kindness, whether it's self-acceptance and things like that. But I'm thinking that that's going to pick up a little bit more over the next couple of years, because I think that kind of development, that kind of teaching that kids need is really going to come in. And kids' books as a brilliant way to actually introduce kids to that, especially with that parent reading to the child connection, where they can actually have those really deep conversations and talk about really important topics, but it's over a kid's book. So I see that space really coming into its own, especially in regards to the social emotional learning in that regard.
Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with Josh, and I'm seeing within that whole theme of social emotional learning that we've had a lot of reflection, and I can start to see now actually a little bit of subversion coming in. We're sort of subverting away from these kind of old ideals for certain topics, but it's always under that umbrella of social and emotional learning, and that's definitely what's come through at the moment. But I think we're sort of subverting against the norms, and we're sort of introducing these trickier themes to children through the books. And one thing I have noticed in the last couple of years, probably since the pandemic, we don't always like to go back to it, but I would say since the pandemic, is that there's a lot more educational organizations who are kind of coming on board and actively using books and setting up book programs within schools, which goes along the lines of what Josh is saying, that this is what we're going to see more of over the next couple of years, these children's books that are being used as tools for children's social emotional learning through schools. So it's definitely building momentum, and it's actually really interesting to see the topics that are coming out, especially, I mean, I can say here for the UK, we are having a lot of autism awareness books that are coming out, and we've just had Autism Awareness Day here, so it really is, there's a lot of reflection and subversion, and it's kind of going hand in hand.
Yeah. And I think you're really right in saying that. And do you see that as a literary agent? Do you see more and more books like that coming through?
Yeah, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm French, so I apologize for my English.
It's
But yeah,
okay.
I'd say we do see books like that a lot more, but maybe it's something to do with the French market. But we kind of had this kind of book a long time ago, actually. We have a very important book in France. It's called La couleur des émotions, which would be emotions colors in English, or the color of emotion, or something like that. That was published in 2014. And it kind of started this movement in France of books about social awareness and emotions and feelings for children. So yeah, I'd say it's starting to get really important in the market right now, but it's not something that just appeared recently. It was building up in the previous years, leading to this increasing awareness, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. And do you see that only in France, or do you see that across Europe?
I really can say for the rest of Europe, markets are very different in books with the different nations.
Yeah,
I can only talk for the French market. I don't really know the other European markets as well. I'd say it's something about France and maybe Germany and Italy, but I don't know if it's the same in the UK or in countries a bit foreigner than that.
yeah.
When I look at the books between the UK, the children books, I'm talking about specifically picture books. When I look at the picture books within the UK and the French market, and I lived in France for a while as well, and I was teaching out there, and obviously I was buying books for my children and students, and I have to say that I feel that in France the topics have been there a lot longer, and they almost feel slightly more grown up in a way when I put them against some of the UK books. But I feel we are catching up with France. That's how it kind of feels like with like in the UK, and if it's the same in Australia, I feel like we're finally getting it. And obviously it's always orchestrated completely by the people at the top, which are the publishing houses. So it's kind of, it feels like they've suddenly got this and they're understanding, because ultimately, as we always say, it goes back to sales. I mean, we can write the best books in the world, but it's whether the publishing houses feel that they can market it and it's going to make money. And I think now they've kind of got on board with this here in the UK specifically, and they're starting to understand that this is absolutely what the younger generation are needing and wanting to talk about these topics and go outside of just reflection or, you know, this kind of childhood construction that was constructed many years ago, and they're looking outside of that now. I think now they're on board. This is possibly where the demand specifically in the UK is coming from. I don't know if that's the same in Australia, but I just feel like the publishers have finally kind of got on board, and that's pushing this momentum through.
Yeah, yeah, we've got it together. What are your thoughts on that, Josh, within Australia?
I would say it's very much, it's beginning to be parent-led, but it's also school-led, education-led, where the schools are demanding, and you know, going, we need better books to be able to communicate with these kids with, and parents are looking for that too, and grandparents are going, okay, look, great, we had all these wonderful books when we were growing up, but sometimes those sort of older kind of books didn't really convey the topics that kids are really wanting to, we need to address right now. You know, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of diversity, a lot of inclusion, all that sort of stuff. And the old books just don't cut it. So the new books that are coming through now are appealing to that market. And that's what publishers are going, okay, well, look, is there a book about autism? Is there a book about Indigenous Australians, about Aboriginals, all that sort of stuff? And that is what's actually coming through very strongly at the moment. I think that's going to have a long way to go yet, you know. I mean, there's a fantastic publisher up in Broome, Magadala Books, I think I said it correctly, and they've been winning awards and their books are just outstanding, and they really put Indigenous voices forward, and they're actually making spaces so they can be heard, so people can read their stories, find out what everything's about, and then have a better understanding. And those books are not just for Indigenous kids, they're for all kids. And that's what I love. And that's that part of that education that is happening through children's books for kids of all ages. And that's what I think is the direction that we're going, is obviously diversity, inclusion, own voices, all that sort of stuff. And that whole own voices thing is another discussion as well.
Yeah, that's right. Excuse me, I'm trying not to cough.
It's still recovering.
Still recovering, yes. As an agent, Anne, is that the kind of books that you're searching for still? Like you've said, it's been over there for a while. Are you still looking for those kind of books, or are you looking for more diversified again?
I'm not looking for any kind of books in particular. When I'm receiving manuscripts and trying to decide if I want to work with those writers or not, I'm not paying a great attention to the topics and subjects. I'm looking for a voice. I'm looking for a vision. I'm looking for writers. There are themes I personally like. For instance, emotions and feelings are something I like to read about. I like to read books about inclusion of every type of community. I like to read books about protection of the environment. It's also a big topic in France and in the publishing markets. But it's not things I'm particularly on the lookout for. I like them personally, but it's not an important decision maker, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. So what direction, like what are you looking for the future? Just anything like you just said, just looking for that writer, or do you think there may be some themes down the track?
Sorry, I didn't understand this one.
Are you looking down for the future, looking,
Yeah.
you know, say towards 2025? Do you think you will still be looking for just the writer and what they've got,
Yes.
and not go with a particular theme?
No, I know it's important for the publishing industry because it's more selling, but I think a writer will be, it's easier to work on the themes than on the writing. So when I decide if I want to work with someone, I need to be sure he is a writer, they are a writer.
Yeah.
The topics can come later.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess, that's a really important thing for me. I'm a really small publisher, and that's only because I will only take on someone if it feels right. If, along the same lines, I've got to know that they are right and it's got to feel right. It's a bit hard to explain, isn't it? It's just, I just won't take anything on. And I guess, you're pretty much saying the same thing as well. And I really can't predict for myself either what's down the track. I just know when I want something and when I don't. Yeah, yeah. Josh, are you going to keep writing the same things?
Yeah.
It's your niche. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it is. It's in my little wheelhouse of what I do, and there will come to a point where I will stop and I go, okay, I've exhausted all my ideas of what I would go back and tell my 8-year-old self, unless I change the age group and go, what would I tell my 15-year-old self? But I don't think I'll do that. It's more just what my 8-year-old self. I've got mostly another 2 kids' books in me, and then I just don't know. I don't know where I'm going to go after that, because I can't just pick a topic and write about it, because I wouldn't feel it. It's not coming out of me. That's that kind of thing. So I look at all these other amazing authors out there, and authors and illustrators, and they're able to pick up a topic, or they're able to adapt something, or just illustrate. And I can't do that. It's got to come from within me, I guess, as the main theme. But I suppose one of the things I wouldn't mind asking Anne is Anne, have you noticed a change in the type of submissions you're getting? Like, say, over the last 2 years, has been a trend in the type of submissions you're getting, like on the topics that they're covering?
Sorry, what were you asking?
I was going to ask you the type of submissions, the topics of what the authors are writing about. Has that changed over the last few years?
Okay, I haven't been an agent for 1 year, but before that I was a publisher, so I kind of can answer this question. Yes, it changed a lot. We see a lot more of text about environment and ecology. We do see more about feelings and emotion like we talked about, but as I said, in France, it's more it's been the last 10 years, so it's not recently. But
Mm.
yeah, very recently we saw a lot more of environment and protection of the environment. We also see a lot of books about recent conflicts and how they impact on the children. Maybe more books about grief and how to overcome difficult emotions. Sarah can talk about that maybe. But yeah, we do have a shift in topics.
Wow, that's good. That's good. And I think that's what we're starting to see here in Australia as well. We're a
Yeah.
bit late on the uptake, but which is it's good, and I'm glad it's happening.
We are late, but it is happening. Yeah, it's
Mm.
happening.
I mean, Jen, the submissions that you get, I mean, have you seen a shift in?
I
What you get?
have, yeah. Gosh, yeah, there's been an amazing shift, particularly since, I was going to say particularly since COVID, but no, not really. It's just over the years, it's just been changing. And I think too that the more people who get to know me and what I publish, that they're honing in on that, which is great.
Mm.
But prior to that, yeah, I went through a time there where all I got was rhyming stories. And that was really bizarre because I didn't ask for them. It
Yeah.
was just seemed to be the thing that writers were writing at the time. And that was only a couple of years ago. And then there was another twist where I was getting manuscripts that were still for picture books, but for the older reader. So books that were not so much for the 4 to 8 group, which is your usual picture books, but maybe the 8 to 12s.
Mm.
Still picture book style, but yeah, it was kind of like, and it was things I hadn't asked for. I was just randomly being sent, and it seemed to be, for like 6 months, I would be inundated with. So I don't know what was going on out in the communities or out in the writing groups, or it just seemed there was this run of rhyme, there was this run of this, the old style picture books. And, now it's settled down again, but I'm kind of wondering, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future, whether people are going to keep honing in on what I particularly do, and that's where it will sit.
Well, if they've done their research,
yes,
they will. This is every writer out there, do your research about the agent or the publisher.
Yeah, we do occasionally get the random, oh, what's this? But not often, fortunately. Yeah. So Sarah, you with the heavy bag, have you got other books like that one? Going
Yeah,
back
so
to social
yeah,
emotional.
yeah, I was just going to say, actually, myself and Josh are quite lucky because obviously at the moment, and to coin the phrase that you just used, trend, the trend is, especially where we are, UK and Australia, the trend is social and emotional learning books. And that's kind of what we've both been writing. I mean, I've come from teaching and a children's mental health background. So naturally, I just kind of went into writing books within that theme. So for us, it's quite lucky because obviously this is the trend at the moment. But as Anne was saying, in France, they've kind of surpassed that slightly. And then now it's more books focused on the climate and climate change. And obviously that's another huge issue that is filtering in to children's knowledge and, their lives at the moment. So I kind of think that we play catch up a little bit with Europe and literature, and especially the children's literature market. So I kind of predict that we're going to carry on with this social and emotional learning books, which is very good for myself and Josh. But I think then we're going to go into climate, and it's going to be a lot of books about the climate. I'm writing for a French publisher at the moment, and out of all the topics and themes that they chose, it is a climate-based one for children, and I think that's possibly where we're heading. I think there's going to be another sort of year or so for social and emotional learning books. A lot of my books, to answer your question, yes, I still write about children's emotions because, like I say, that's that's my background, and like Josh said, it's really hard to just change your writing because of a trend. That's really hard to do. I mean, at some point you do kind of have to make decisions, and there are ways that you can change your topics but still keep your writing true to how it is. But I mean, looking at social and emotional learning books, you know, there are so many topics, and going back to what we were saying earlier about all the new diversity, inclusion, subversion, you know, reflection, mirrors and reflection, you know, everything. This all comes under the umbrella of social and emotional learning. There's so many avenues that as a writer you can go off in, and so many different causes and themes and topics that you can kind of bring into your work. So I don't think it's going anywhere for a long time, if ever, but I definitely feel that there will be certain trends that are going to come in and kind of supersede this. So, you know, we're looking at climate change for children. I think Anne's right. I think that's a huge and very important topic, and I think we're going to play catch up here in the UK, possibly Australia as well, in the next couple of years. But I don't think now all the educational organizations and schools and libraries have all kind of jumped on board, you know, understanding how important using books for children to get these topics across is. I don't think that's going anywhere. I just think other trends and topics are going to probably come in for a while and just kind of come and go.
Yeah. Josh, do you see that happening here in Australia? I know a few authors who have a science background, whether they've been science teachers or whatever. They tend to be the ones that write for kids about climate change, but they also struggle getting it into the market. Do you see that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, from what I've seen of you know, author friends on Facebook and places like that, that there are a lot of subversion, to use your term, Sarah, of weaving in environmental stories into kids' books, you know, and I'm seeing that come out through over the last 2 or 3 years. That's happening increasingly, and whether it's a story about drought or something like that, or how the climate's affecting something, it doesn't have to be about the catastrophe, but it could be like a little story that affects a small child about the bigger issues, and it allows the parents to read the book to the kids or and start those sort of conversations. But I'm seeing a lot more of those books coming through, and but obviously there's a lot of, you know, science books out there and stuff like that for middle grade readers that are touching on the climate change. Because I think, you know, at what age do you start to talk to these kids about these topics? And the younger the better, really, personally.
And I guess, sorry, that's what I should have pointed out. The authors I know who are writing about this and are trying to get their books out there, they're trying to write for the little ones.
Okay, yep.
And it's not, and they're finding it difficult to get published, writing about, you know, the climate change. It seems to be like the older the middle grade readers, it's accepted.
Yep.
But the early readers, a little bit, but the picture books, not so much. And is that
because it tends, would the story not tends to be a bit not on the depressing side, but it's not an uplifting story or something, or what would the
I wonder if it's how it aligns with schools. I mean, we've said how important and how led the industry is becoming through schools now, and the books that they're using. We've got quite a few middle grade books about the environment and they are written by scientists, and they're actually doing really well, but they're doing a lot of school visits and, you know, they're going in and they're doing a whole presentation around their book, and they're actually giving the children a lesson which would be on the syllabus for us, which is, you know, it's there. So schools are pulling on these writers, but it's definitely upper end of, I mean, ours start secondary at 11 here, so you're looking right at the top end of 11 plus. I've seen a few picture books based around the environment for children. but yeah, still hasn't come through yet. So, but I think that's going to happen, because I think a lot of the subjects in our upper schools now are starting to filter through into primary schools. And we've spoken before, Josh, about these social emotional learning lessons for children in primary now. And my daughter's 6 and she's had some lessons at school. It's an actual content subject. And I think it's all starting to filter down from our secondary schools. And I think as soon as that happens, when they have more science-based lessons about the environment, that's when we're going to see a flood in the UK of picture books talking about the environment.
Yeah.
Does that happen in France, Anne?
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
We do actually have books for young children in France about climate change and environment. It's just that they are very different in how they are ended. The ones for children maybe not so young. So, for instance, picture books about climate change will focus on nature and how we have to love and respect nature, more than on the necessity to really protect the environment, for instance. And one thing I realized, and we talked about with Sarah, is that publishers in France are not really open to pessimistic books about climate change. They really want something with an optimistic lookout. They want books in which children are given keys to act, to help in this battle. They don't want books that would just say that what we are doing is bad, because that's not what they want to teach children. They want to give hope and maybe ways for the children to do something in this topic. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I believe that the most important thing we can do for children is to talk, not necessarily to make them act, but to make them love nature and want to protect it. But that's what I observed in the French market.
It's all very interesting, isn't it? And it's interesting how the different countries operate. I personally find it just fascinating, and I wonder how sometimes we can all come together on this, you know.
And I wonder if that also plays into, obviously, with environmental books, you know, some of them are going to be very specific to each country. I mean, obviously Australia, you've got some climate changes and environmental themes that probably wouldn't necessarily work here in the UK. I mean, there's obviously the bigger picture, we know that, of the planet and, you know, what's happening there, but there's obviously probably some very specific topics that would only work in Australia as opposed to here in the UK. So I guess again, that then goes back to the publishing houses and, you know, which publishers look for foreign rights and which publishers work only internally.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Sarah. Yeah.
But it's also, it could be that, you know, unfortunately the whole climate thing's been politicized as well in so many countries, especially in Australia. And so it's you know, your publishing houses may not go for the younger kids. Well, we don't want to push them one way or the other. But then again, I think as Anne was saying, it's a book that shows a child what they can actually do, what's an actionable thing they can do, that they can do for the environment. And recently, last year, my publisher, Big Sky Publishing, released a book by Alison Patterson, and it was just talking about how to keep a beach clean, but all the rubbish that gets swept up on the beach and all that sort of stuff, and how a child or how the community can come together to create a clean environment. And those sort of books, I think, have a lot of weight and can go a long way to giving kids ideas of how to protect the environment, what they can do. And I think that's empowering kids is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's those words, how to. Kids respond to that, how do I do it? Because they want to get involved. And it's those words that draw them in, that, you know, how do I do this? You know? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to use my book as an example, Being Wildly Kind, the green one behind me. that talks about how to be kind to yourself, to other people, to animals, and to the environment. And when I do my school talks, I go in and I specifically do it for the younger kids, like say pre-primary to year 2. I just read the book and I do an animated thing, and I talk about, who's got a veggie garden in the backyard, who's growing their own fruit and veggies, how do you recycle, and you got to go to a friend's birthday party, but you can't buy anything, but you can make them something. What will you make? And those sort of things, and giving them ideas and feeding them that way. And kids love that. They love getting creative and using all these different ideas.
Yeah, they absolutely do. So, and if we can go back to you, changing the topic here a little bit, what is the best way for publishers or authors to contact not just you in particular, but literary agents in general?
Of literary agents in France, so I don't know if yours is because they don't exist in my medias and social media. So for me, the best it's to email me. You can find all information on the website. You can find also other agents maybe on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of people found me. But for children literature, I think I'm the only one on the market right now. So yeah, just email me.
Yeah, just email you. Yeah. I guess everyone's different. Josh, have you ever approached a lit agent?
Yeah, a few times with a few different book proposals that I've had, and in Australia, as most people know, there's very few literary agents. There's only about 15 or maybe 20 at that.
Yeah.
And their books are usually full, and they usually don't take unsolicited manuscripts. And if you do, it's a word friend recommends someone or something like that, and it's very difficult to get in. But once you get in and you get an agent, that can be fantastic and actually be a career-changing opportunity, as obviously Sarah, you would know. So it's
again. Yeah, I was just going to say, in contrast, the UK is very different then to Australia, because it's very agent-led in the UK to approach publishers. It is possible there are some who will accept unsolicited manuscripts, but it's very agent-led here, and we're actually flooded with agents in the UK. It's the opposite to what you're saying. That's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're really hard to find here in Australia. Like Josh said, their books are quite often closed because they're 2 years ahead.
Yeah. Yes.
Intake. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And do you find that? Is that the same for you guys over there?
Yeah, like I said, there's not a lot of literary agents in France, and even less in the children's books markets. But that's why I try to, I can't work with every author that wants to work with me, because I just don't have the time. But I try to do a lot of things free for everybody, because I know that it's important for writers to have feedbacks on their work. So I'll try to answer to everybody that emails me. I'll try to give feedback as much as I can. And I participate in things like we are doing today. Actually, I try to make videos. I am on Twitch. I am on TikTok. I try to create a lot of free content for French writers to actually feel like they can talk to people, because sometimes, having feedback from publishers is very hard, and it can feel very lonely to be a writer in France. So that's why I'm trying to open the door to everybody. I can't work with everybody, but at least I'll try to answer and give guidance to anyone who wants.
Yeah. It's fantastic that you have your doors open like that. Yeah. Sorry, Josh, were you going to say something there?
No, I was just going to say that that's the opposite in Australia. Usually, all agents are shut doors, don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's sort of like you get a short, sharp response. But that's a great motivation, Anne, is to try and help as many people as you can, even just offering advice or something like that if you don't take them on board. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm trying anyway.
Oh, it's great, Anne. It's great to have to know that there's agents like you out there. It's It's just a matter of finding you. So hopefully you won't get inundated too much. Or maybe it's a good thing if you do. After people watch this, you might get a few Aussies sending you an email or some people from the UK.
Oh, I have a lot
So-
of demand from the UK actually. I was a bit surprised because you guys have a lot of agents already, so why me? But
yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you once again, everyone. Week 7, we have 1 week left in the Inspire series. And then we'll see what happens after that. So thanks, Josh. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you so much, Anne. And we will chat again next week.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Oops.